Hi everyone! In this video I'll be sharing with you the 11 biggest tips I've found since I got my Cricut a few years ago. Most of these are pretty basic tips and some are more advanced. The first set of tips I'll be sharing with you are for using design space specifically. Tip number 1, always attach score lines. So when I first got my Cricut, I couldn't figure out why when I would add a score line to something, it would try to go on a separate mat and would not score on top of the actual shape that I wanted it on. So I'm going to demonstrate for you here by creating a heart shape and then adding a score line down the middle. And then I'll horizontally align everything. So I thought at this point it should be ready to go. We have our shape and we have a score line on top of it. So I'll go ahead and click Make It. And you can see that we have a problem. It wants to score on this white mat here and then cut the shape on this pink mat. So it doesn't want to do the two things together on one mat like I need it to. So cancel that. And then I thought, well, I guess everything needs to be grouped and that must be the problem. So I'd select both layers and then group them. So now everything will move around together, but if you click Make It, you'll see that it's doing the exact same thing. It wants to score on one mat and cut on the other. So the trick to this is to always select both of your layers, the scoreline layer and the object layer, and click Attach. You always want to do this when you use score lines, otherwise it won't stay with the shape. So now that everything is attached, we can go ahead and click Make It, and you'll see that now it's scoring and cutting on one mat just like we need it to. If you've been using Cricut for a little while, you probably already know this tip, but it's something I struggled with in the beginning, so I thought I'd share. My second tip is that you can rearrange items on the mat to make better use of space. So I have all of these different sizes and shapes of objects that I want to cut. So I'll go ahead and click Make It, and it will sort those objects out onto a mat. Now usually it does a really good job of putting things where they'll use up the paper well, but sometimes you'll find you want to move stuff around, or if you have a certain shape of paper you want to fit stuff on, you'll need to move things. So while you're still on this screen, you can just move stuff around wherever you want it. So I can move stuff closer together, or I can rotate things just to make everything fit better. So now I have everything moved around into a way that works better for me. My third tip is that you don't always need a full sheet of material. When I first got my Cricut, I thought that I always needed to use a full sheet of paper and I couldn't use any scraps. But here on the screen, you can see that if I click on the object, it will show me the size of it. And then if I click Make It, it will show me the object on the mat where it will be cut, so I can get an idea of how big of a piece of material that I need in order to fit this object on it. So you can see here that I need paper that is at least 6.5 inches wide by about 6.25 inches tall. So I'm just going to set my mat size to the smallest size. And you can see that I can use this as a guideline to find a piece of material that will fit the heart. So I took this piece of paper that was the right size and I put it on the mat, and then I cut the heart. And you can see that this worked just fine without using a full sheet of paper. Tip number 4 is that if you're having trouble with your machine cutting really slowly or pausing while it's cutting, try closing your other browser tabs. So if you have design space open with a whole bunch of tabs like I do here, sometimes your machine will start to slow way down, or it will start doing long pauses between each cut that it's making. And in that case, you should try going through and closing all your other tabs so the only one you have open is Cricut Design Space. For me, this usually completely fixes the problem. This next set of tips is just for using the machine in general. Tip number 5 is that when removing an item from the mat, bend the mat and not the item. When I first got my machine, I really struggled with getting things off the mat in the right way without leaving them bent or ripped. I used to try grabbing a corner and peeling the item off the mat, but I quickly found out that you don't want to do this because it usually ends up bending the item. Instead of bending the item, try bending the mat. I've found it easiest to just grab the bottom of the mat and kind of bend and roll it until you can easily peel off the paper off the mat without hurting it. You will need to be extra careful when your mat is brand new and very sticky. Tip number 6 is that you can put either end of the mat into the machine. So looking at the mat, you usually put this end that has the hole to hang it from into the machine. What you may not know is that you can also put this end, the bottom end, into the machine and it will work also. So a quick way to tell which end you can put in the machine is to look for the sides that are thicker and have the Cricut logo. So you can see that this side is thinner and does not have a logo, same with this side, and neither one of these will work if you put them in the machine. So when you're going to use a mat, always look for the thicker side with the logo and it should work fine. Tip number 7 builds off of the last tip, and it's that you can cut 2 different mats on one mat to save time. So here I have 3 pink hearts and 3 white hearts. So normally these would each need to cut on a different mat because they're a different color. But I'll show you this quick trick that works for smaller objects to cut 2 different mats on one mat. So you don't need to do anything else here except click Make It. And you can see that there's 2 mats, one with these 3 white hearts and then a second mat with these 3 pink hearts. So I'll go ahead and find some white and pink paper that is big enough to cut each set of these hearts on. And I'll go ahead and click Continue. So here I have the white paper laid out just like normal in the upper left corner of the mat to cut those 3 white hearts. And then I also added a pink piece of paper to cover the 3 pink hearts in the lower right corner of the mat. So the way that this works is we'll put this end of the mat in first and cut those hearts like normal. Then you'll take the mat out and turn it around and put this end in. So I'll show you how that works here. So I'll put this end in to cut the 3 white hearts. Then take it out and turn it around, and then have it cut the second mat, which is the 3 pink hearts. And that is one way that you can turn around and cut another mat on the same mat without having to take anything off of it. Tip number 8 is that the Cricut scoring stylus can also be used in your hand. This might seem obvious to most people, but when I first got the scoring stylus, I wasn't sure if it was actually supposed to be used this way. But I've used it by hand on many projects, and if you've seen very many of my YouTube videos, you've probably seen me use it. And I found that it worked well for me this way. Tip number 9 is really important. It's that you should keep your mat covered with the plastic sheet when you're not using it. So here I have a brand new mat, and you'll see that it has this plastic sheet. And this is something that you definitely do not want to throw away. So set the sheet somewhere safe while you're using the mat. Speaking from personal experience, make sure that it doesn't fall on the floor because it's super slippery if you step on it. When you're finished, place it back on the mat so it covers the whole sticky area. This will keep your mat working much better and it will last a much longer amount of time. In addition to the last tip, tip number 10 is that CLOROX wipes are great for cleaning your mats and making them sticky again. So here I have an older mat that's gotten pretty dirty just from using it a lot and leaving the plastic off it too much. And you can see that at this point it probably doesn't work very well. Stuff doesn't stick to it, and you'll find that when you try to cut on a mat like this, stuff will slide around and not cut well. So all you need to do is get some CLOROX wipes. I'm just using the Sam's Club version. Then take the wipe and thoroughly scrub down the mat until it starts to look much cleaner and most of the stuff that's stuck to the mat will start to come off. Then once it's been cleaned, just set it aside and let it dry. And once it's dry, you'll see that it's regained its stickiness and it works great again. The last tip is to use the machine's bottom compartment for storing tools. So when you have tools like the scoring stylus or pens in the machine, they're obviously too tall to close up the machine, and it works well to put them in this holder over here most of the time. But if you're going to be packing up your machine and carrying it somewhere, they'll fall out of there and you might lose them. So it's best to put them in this little compartment right here in the bottom of the machine. Most people probably know this is here, but just in case, I wanted to share it with you because I think it's super handy. Thank you so much for watching. I hope there was something in this video that you found helpful. If you like this video and there's any other Cricut topics you'd like me to cover, you can let me know down below. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day.